January 21st, 2025, regular meeting of the Union County Board of Commissioners to order. And at this time, I would like to recognize Commissioner Gary Sides.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is my honor and privilege to recognize for our invocation tonight my pastor, Reverend Chris Justice from Lee Park Church. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks. All right, let's pray. God, thank you for the wonderful community in which we live. What a blessing to walk into the government building and have the words so prominently displayed, "In God we trust," and then to be able to start this meeting by praying to the God we trust. We are grateful for the men and women who have made the effort and the step to take positions of leadership in our community. We pray that you would continue to guard and bless the county commissioners, give them wisdom and give them strength as they make decisions that are best for this wonderful community. God, we are thankful to live here. We're thankful that you love us, and we love you. We pray to you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
If everyone would please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do not have anyone signed up for informal comments. And it appears we do not have a public hearing. So that brings us to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair.
Sorry. Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let me play catch up because we're moving along really quickly here. I know, all the way in the back.
9.
That brings us to the business portion of our agenda. The first item for business is item 25-008, fiscal year 2024 annual comprehensive financial report. I would like to recognize our CFO, Beverly Lyles.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners, management team. We are at the finale of our audit, so this is a great day. This is our last step to finalize the FY24 audit. And I would like to thank a few members of our staff that actually are here with us tonight. This audit would not be possible without the entire finance team and the county, but one particular individual that's here tonight is Abru Kruko in the audience. I'm gonna, embarrass her, but she is our senior accountant, our CPA on staff, and she does a lot of heavy lifting for this, so I wanted to recognize her. Also, I wanted to thank all of the departments across the county. This audit would not be possible without their collaboration. As you are aware, this county has many, many grants that we have to administer, monitor, and make sure we're in compliance with. A lot of that heavy lifting is done by the Human Services team, and I would like to thank them for their time and effort that goes into our audit process as well, and also our management team for your support throughout the entire audit process to make sure it goes smoothly. So tonight, first, you will receive a presentation from our auditor. Dan Goggerty is here. He is an audit director with our audit firm, Cherry Beckert. He is here to present to you the required presentation as required by the Local Government Commission. Following his presentation, I will do a very high-level presentation of the actual financial statement results that we will not go over in detail because, as you have in front of you, is a very thick book for the entire financial statements for your reading. Also, I wanted to point out tonight in your agenda is the PAFR, which I've also printed out for you, is the popular annual financial report. It's a very condensed version of our financial statements that is easier to read for those that are not as familiar with reading through financial statements. So any citizens out there that would like to have a copy of that, I would ask that you reach out online tomorrow. It will be there for viewing. And without further ado, I would like Dan Garverty to come and do his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. It's always a good part of the audit to be able to sit here and speak to you about the overall results. The ACFR is a long financial statement, over 200 pages long, and so I hope to be able not to give you a highlight of every financial aspect there, but just from our audit perspective, how the audit went, what we saw during the audit, and how our ultimate results were. Just going straight into it, the first thing we always like to do is just recognize our team as well for the work that it took to get this completed. I lead the engagement team as the engagement director. Scott Anderson was the second reviewer on this financial statement for quality purposes. Stephanie Rosinski is the manager, and then Jason Robert were the senior and associate on this engagement. We audit the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. We also audit the financial statements in accordance with government auditing standards. That's all in which to form an opinion, to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. And so we also look at, as Beverly had mentioned, was your federal and state grant spending. And so when we look at that, we're looking at compliance over those federal and state grants to make sure you are in compliance with the spending of those grants in accordance with the grant agreements, and that you are also have controls in place over compliance. We issued unmodified opinions in all cases. We issue unmodified opinion, which is also known as a clean opinion, and it's the highest level opinion that we can give under our auditing standards. This slide is a long way of just saying that we do look at internal controls over compliance, but we do not test the effectiveness of those internal controls. We make sure that the controls are in place and that they are appropriate in terms of what to deal with compliance, but again, not the effectiveness over controls. This slide just speaks to you about if we do find a control issue, we report those issues to you if they rise to the level of a material weakness or a significant deficiency. I'm happy to say we had no material weaknesses and there was no reported significant deficiencies either this year's audit. This slide just speaks to the number of grant programs that we look at during the year. And as mentioned earlier, a lot of these programs are out of your Department of Health and Human Services department and also out of your Department of Public Health. The only one out in here that really doesn't apply to that is the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, which is also known as the ARPA funds, and those funds have to be audited as required by the federal government every year you spend more than $750,000. On the state program, one of the new funds, new programs that we've audited that we haven't audited before was the opioid settlement funds as you begin to spend those monies, and we found no issues or any issues with compliance as it relates to those funds either. If we become aware of any audit adjustments as part of our testing that account needs to be adjusted to present the financial statements fairly, we need to make you aware of that. Sometimes adjustments could be lower in level, but still require us to make you aware of that the management can pass on. In each case, we did not have either. So we had no corrected adjustments and no past adjustments as a result of this year's audit, which basically means the financial statements that we opine upon are those provided by management at the beginning of our audit, as what you see now in the final issued annual comprehensive financial report. The next 5 or 7 slides is pre-printed information we need to give to you on a yearly basis. I'll go through this fairly quickly, but please stop me if I'm going too quickly. Note 1 is where your significant accounting policies lie. You had no new accounting pronouncements that were adopted this year, so no change in accounting principles. Related parties, we need to be made aware of any related parties you have as a county. Make sure that they're properly disclosed within your financial statements. If we note any related parties that were not made aware to us by management that we consider to be material, we would make you aware of that, but we had no such instances in this year's audit. If we find anything that considered to be significant or unusual, kind of outside the normal extent of the county's operations, unusual due to the timing, nature, or size of the transaction, we need to make you aware of that, and we noted no such transactions for this year's audit. The county used a number of estimates to develop a number of financial statement line items during the year. Most notably is your pension and other post-employment benefit obligations that were reported as liabilities in your financial statements. Those use actuarial assumptions and key metrics to calculate what that liability should be. And we noted no issues with any wrong assumptions being made or anything that would outlie, that would be different than what we'd expect from other governments such as yourselves. The financial statement disclosures are neutral, clear, and consistent. There were no disclosures in particular that we needed to make you aware of. Non-attest, so attest being audit service, so any non-audit services that we provide. The only non-audit service is helping filling out the data collection form. This form is required for us to be helping fill out, and it's the form that we fill out that summarizes our federal audits that is then transmitted to the federal government so that each department can have the findings and any issues or what was been audited in a clear, concise manner from all over the United States. And we had no issues with anything in terms of independence. Cornerstone of our profession is that we be independent of the county in doing our testing, and we are independent of Union County. We had no difficulties encountered as part of our audit, no disagreements with management, no consultations within our own audit firm on this audit or any accounting matters. We received the manager representation letter dated October 31st for the financial statements that were ready to be issued as of that date, and then November 26th as of the date of our compliance report. Manager consultations, no shopping for an opinion or a second opinion from anybody outside of our firm by management, no other findings or issues noted, no fraud, illegal acts, or violations of law or regulations noted as of the date of this presentation, and no events or conditions that created any going concern matters to be discussed. This one talks about different information. Your annual comprehensive financial report, like I said, is a 200-page document. The bulk of that is your financial statements and notes, which we provide opinions on. Everything else at the beginning and end of the annual comprehensive report are other information that we give either limited assurance on, such as your supplementary information, your budget to actual schedules, your combining schedules in the back, or we give no assurance on whether it be your introductory section, your statistical section, and pension schedules that follow the notes. These four standards are the ones that will be applicable to the county in the coming years, the first two being next year and the last two being in 2026. 101 will be just a possibility of further accrual of sick leave that wasn't accrued in the past to account for potential use of sick leave even though it's not paid out upon termination. And then 102 is certain disclosures that we do not believe that will affect the county's financial statements. The next couple of slides have to do with the local government commission. They have certain financial performance indicators that they like us to look at as part of our audit, and they like us to be able to present that to those in charge of governance on a yearly basis to let you know where you stand and let you know if there's any issues with it. In this case, the performance indicator for the general fund here is your fund balance available as a percentage of your expenditures. You are required to have at least a 16% threshold here, and so you are well over the 16% threshold that's required here. The one thing I will note here is that where you may look at a county level at your fund balance from unassigned level, this includes committed and restricted balances in this percentage, and that's why it's probably higher than what you're used to seeing provided to you by management throughout the year. But this is how the local government commission requires us to calculate it for you for this purpose. Quick ratio is basically a ratio of your current assets to current liabilities. So what do you have available to you to pay current liabilities? And so you're at a 5. It just needs to be greater than a 1. But I'll say just from a comparison for other governments we do, counties and cities that have water and sewer, you're very much in line. Most people have anywhere between 3 to 7 ratio. One thing new from last year was water condition of assets. So rating just the inverse relationship of your accumulated depreciation to your gross asset value. And so you want to be above a 0.50. And as you see with the investments you've made into the water and sewer over the last year, you've improved from a .51 in 2023 to a .67 in the current year. And the last thing is that just from budgeted taxes levy, the general fund, you got to make sure that you're collecting at least more than 3%. You were greater than what you budgeted for what you collected. You had a positive general fund total balance, effective pre-audit process, so you make sure that you're approving expenditures before you, and make sure you have the money to spend those expenditures before you are actually paying those invoices or incurring the contracts to those. No late debt service payments or debt covenant compliance issues, and there were no statutory violations noted. No budgets were being overspent. I just want to also just thank as well the finance department for all their help in getting the financial statements done. And as Beverly mentioned, Department of Social Services and Department of Public Health has a heavy lift this year. We had probably tested more grants than we've ever tested in the last couple of years because just the way the thresholds worked and how we have to test it on a rotational basis. And so it was a sorted effort by everyone, and I really do appreciate all their time and effort in getting to us on time. So I'll leave any questions.
If I'm, approximately how many counties do your client base consist of?
In North Carolina, we have about 15 or
Okay.
so counties that we
All
do.
right. In your experience, as well as with your clients, but also out just of the universe, not having a single finding, which our audit this year does not have a finding,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say, just guesstimate percentage of counties that you either know of or work with that don't have a finding in their annual audit this year and past?
It's hard to
Half of
say
them?
off the set, but half of them probably, yeah, I
Okay.
would be comfortable with that.
All right.
Yep.
So it is a fairly significant achievement.
Yep, no, that's a fair statement.
Thank you.
Yep.
I would like to ask you to go back to the water and sewer slides. I believe there were two on that.
Yeah. This one, or
And-
this
Keep that one.
one? So this one's the general fund.
Oh, wait,
Yeah,
wait,
yeah.
okay. Then go to the next one. I remember there were two on water and sewer. So I hate to put you on the spot,
Sure.
but I would like to ask maybe the county manager, because I know that water and sewer is a very huge topic around the county. Can you speak to these, increases, can you explain to us and the public, what has changed from 2022 to 23 and 24?
I'll be honest with you, these quick ratios are not my expertise.
Okay.
I'd ask Daniel if he could maybe expand on it just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say to that is just really where we look at there is your unrestricted cash that is going to be able to be spent on operations, although some of that unrestricted cash may be used for capital purposes as well that might not be restricted in nature through impact fees or whatever is collected to get those. I couldn't speak exactly to why it went up or down, but I believe what happened there is your assets had increased versus your liabilities decreased, making that ratio better, an improvement from a 4 to a 5.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway here is that lower is worse, that higher is actually better.
And that's why I wanted to go back and talk about this, because I think there's a lot of misinformation around the county about where we are with water and sewer. And this is very encouraging to see that year over year since 2022, we've gone from 2.9 to 5.14.
I think the next slide, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
is
let's go to the
also-
next one.
That one is a little bit more telling in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's talking about the investment that we have made in our system.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we are now moving up as far as that conditions assessment. They want you to be at least at .50. we've raised it from 0.51 last year to 0.67. And that really, in my opinion, is because the board has given us the approval to invest in our utility.
Did it have anything to do with us increasing the connection fee? Because I know we went through that exercise last year. Did that help at all, or no?
This is referring to the actual fixed assets that we have in
Okay.
the infrastructure.
Okay.
So you could attribute some of this to Yadkin fully coming online and
Gotcha.
being added as 100% of a fixed asset at the end of June 30th, which I will talk about a little bit in my presentation for the major changes in assets year over year.
Yeah, I think this is great information, and I'm very happy to see this in the report. And I hope the public recognizes, the decisions that we've made in the past couple of years and the investments that we're making in water and sewer improvements is making a difference clearly.
And
Thank you.
Is it fair to assume that when the 12 Mile Creek expansion comes online, that would also continue to improve that figure?
Yes, absolutely. So anytime you're investing in assets, which is infrastructure, and you're adding those new
Upgrades.
assets on,
Yeah.
you have a greater useful life of new assets to depreciate over a 30 or even 40-year period, which is Yadkin is over a 40-year period. So you're adding that value to your overall useful life of the assets that we hold.
So the higher the figure means the less amount, in theory, of stuff we have getting ready to wear out.
Absolutely.
And when you have years where you might not do as much investment in the water sewer, this will come down, but that's part of the nature of it and how it goes. That's not a warning sign. It's the local government commission, though, does see that if you have a deteriorating system and you're going below half the useful life, that is signs that something could be going wrong. And there has been a number of smaller municipalities throughout North Carolina that have had significant troubles with their water system over the last couple of years, and so this was something that they really thought needs to get in front of those in charge of governance so they can really have an idea of where they're at.
Really good information. Thank you very much.
Any further questions for the auditor?
Thank you for your time.
So now I will go over a very high-level presentation of the actual financial results from 2024. So if there's anything that I'm referring to that you're not familiar with the terminology, please just stop me and ask me to explain, because a lot of what we do in finance is accounting terminology that the general public may not be familiar with. So we're going to go over the government-wide statements, which this means this is our full accrual statement. So this includes all assets and liabilities of the county, which in order to book those, that includes full GAAP accounting and governmental accounting, which means you don't actually budget for all of that in what you would see during the budget process, because we're only using those government-wide statements to book the full accrual counting. So these are things that are due in the future, or assets that we're holding that we've already paid for, so you wouldn't see that throughout the budget process. And then we'll go over the general fund, where the revenues come from and where we expend those at. And then a very high-level overview of the water and sewer fund. We don't go through all of the funds with you because we would be here all night if we went through every single fund that we actually have to manage. But you are welcome to read that entire book as you have time and ask any questions you have. So to begin with, this first slide here is what we're referring to as the government-wide net position statement. This takes all of the county's assets and breaks it down, and all of the liabilities into governmental activities versus business activities. And governmental activities includes everything for the county except for water and sewer and solid waste. So that's what your business type activities are going to reflect. So for the current year for FY24, the assets and deferred outflows exceeded the liabilities and the deferred inflows for our net position for the county overall, for all funds and all departments, for $421 million. So we saw a decrease of about $11 million from the prior year. And one thing I wanted to point out that you may not be familiar with governments in North Carolina is that we carry all of the long-term debt for all the schools' capital projects that we have bond funded. However, we're not allowed to carry those assets on our books. The schools actually carry the assets, so it is of the norm that you will see county governments in North Carolina have a total net position in their governmental activities. That's actually a negative, which would mean your balance sheet is kind of upside down from what you would expect to see from someone in the private sector. That's a very high-level overview. You can look at each one of these categories and see the change over year, and I'll talk about the major ones on the next slide. So if you don't have any questions about this particular slide, I'll move forward. So the major changes that we saw in assets from FY23 to 24 is in our cash and investments. We had a decrease of $76 million. And this was to be expected because in our cash and investments, that includes bond proceeds as well. So as we're spending down money on bond projects such as Forest Hills High School, East Elementary School, and Yadkin, you are expected to see your cash from the prior year go down because now you're actually bringing those assets in. So that's why our capital assets actually increased by $25 million. The majority of that was bringing on the Southwest Regional Library that opened up this past year and the completion of the Yadkin Regional Water Plant and intake. And the reason there's only $25 million going in is because as we were working on those projects, and you knew Yadkin took us about 2.5, 3 years total to finish, we add that construction work in progress over time into our fixed assets or capital assets. So this was just the portion that we recognized in FY24 for Yadkin. So our deferred outflows of resources, which is usually related to the OPEB pension and separation allowance actuarial study results, we saw a net increase of $19.8 million. And that's resources that would be going out into the future that we have to record for the government-wide statement. For liability changes, we saw a net increase in the OPEB liability, and this is really due to the change in assumptions year over year based on the actuarial study results that Dan mentioned. There's a lot of assumptions that go into those calculations, including economic factors for inflation, interest rates. Where do we think interest rates are going? We're in a lowering interest rate environment. So all of those calculations come into effect to actually have those net changes year over year. For our retirement pension liability, for the county share of the statewide local government retirement system, we saw an increase of $9 million. And for our long-term debt liability, we had a decrease of $47 million. And this is really because in FY24, we didn't add on any additional debt. We only made debt payments for principal to pay down our debt. And then we saw a decrease in the deferred inflow of resources related to OPEB pension and separation allowance. So I'll stop there for the government-wide major changes and ask if you have any questions about those. Yes, sir.
I do. That's interesting. You said that we can count an asset such as the Yadkin plant before it's actually completed?
So the way fixed asset accounting works is it's called construction work in progress. And so it gets added as part of the asset value, but you do not start depreciating that asset until it is fully completed.
So what do you do? Just take, you figure total cost and then where you are in the process at the end of the year?
It's
period?
based on actual spent dollars.
Okay,
So
actual-
whatever
okay.
you actually spend on that construction project
Okay.
gets added into construction work in progress assets.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so when we actually get to the water and sewer presentation, you will see a increase in their overall operating expenditures, which we'll talk about then, but it's related to Yadkin coming fully online and that depreciation expense being recognized for the first year. Any further questions? Okay. So now we'll switch over and talk about general funds, and I want to clarify when we talk about general funds based on financial statement results, this is all of our general funds combined together. You as a board have chosen to bifurcate those out based on the education funds and the separate debt funds, but this is a combination of all 5 of those funds added together. So actual revenues for the general fund exceeded the budget by $3.9 million. Actual expenditures of $355 million The expenditures were under budget by 16.3, and the exceeded budget, either over or under, is how you actually determine the variances, if you either add money to fund balance or you're actually spending money. The other financing sources and expenses for the general funds for '24 was around 62 million. This really represents any transfers that we transfer out of the general fund into the CIP funds, into our volunteer fire districts for the county share, and also any new leases and subscriptions that we would have entered into for contracts during the year. So we saw an overall decrease in fund balance of around $16 million for FY24. And if you recall, during the FY24 budget process, there was a significant, I'll say around $15 million of fund balance that we actually, appropriated to actually spend on one-time expenditures. So you would expect to see that those would decrease in the following year's audit results. So just a high level of percentages, where our revenue comes from. This is probably no surprise to most of you all, is that 61% of the general fund's revenue come from property taxes, followed by sales tax at 18%, and then 12% is intergovernmental. The intergovernmental revenue is made up of federal and state grants and any interlocal agreements that we have in place with other towns, municipalities, or other governments. So any of our town contracts that we have in place for the sheriff's office, that revenue gets added into intergovernmental revenue. And then for our expenses, our biggest expense category is our education for our education partners, followed by public safety, and then debt, leases, and subscription-based IT arrangements, followed by human services, and then 11% is really general government costs for what we operate on as administration of the county. So for our final results for fund balance, I want to first go over the categories for fund balance and what each one of these mean. So you start at the highest level of restriction and go down. So non-spendable includes any items that you really can't turn into cash or spend. And this includes, for us, inventory that we have on hand at Cane Creek Park and the camp store that we have for sale, any prepaid postage that we have, and any inventory that we hold at the garage for our fleet is made up of the non-spendable category. For restricted, these are amounts that are restricted by external parties or policies or laws and regulations, and the state statutes require us to restrict fund balance for any accounts receivable balance that we have. And part of this is so large because we have to wait 3 months after the end of the fiscal year to receive all sales tax for the prior year. So there's a 3-month lag there. And that's important to note because this is the first year we've had all the funds bifurcated out that we're seeing these results. And it's important that we realize that in prior years, those 3 months worth of sales tax that were for the articles of sales tax that are restricted for schools and for their capital and for their debt were in our general fund. Now we're actually putting those sales tax dollars into the education debt fund. So as you read this chart and you see the restricted fund balance under the education debt fund for $6 million, that represents that 3-month lag worth of sales tax. And we'll talk about that in the next slide and some recommendations on how we need to consider to take care of that in the future. And then your next amount is committed. This is the board's policy for the committed fund balance that you adopt each year in the budget ordinance. So for FY24, this was around $72 million, which is 20% of the next year's adopted budget operating expenditures. Following that is an assigned fund balance category. The assigned fund balance is made up of funding that you as a board have already taken action on to spend on something in the future. So during your FY25 budget process, you elected to spend around, I think it was $14 million in fund balance on one-time items, and then anything that rolled from the prior year during the budget roll encumbrance process is included in the assigned fund balance as well. And the last category is unassigned fund balance. So this is any amounts that are available for any purpose that you as a board can take action on in the future to spend on one-time items or to pay down debt service, which is based on your fund balance policy. Is there any questions before we move forward? One thing I said is that we wanted to make some recommendations for fund balance for the general fund, unassigned fund balance. As we said, there's around $15 million available. However, previously, before all the funds were bifurcated out, all of that sales tax revenue was going into the general fund. But now we're using that sales tax to actually pay debt service costs for the schools based on the restricted sales tax articles. And if we go back to the other page, and you can see in this education debt fund here, and when you come down to the bottom, we actually have a negative unassigned fund balance because this is restricted fund balance based on that sales tax lag. So what our recommendation would be throughout the manager's budget process is that we don't actually spend all of our general fund balance like we have in the past for one-time items, and that we would actually recommend holding that back because year after year after year, you're going to have a 3-month sales tax lag no matter what. And you want to be able to have that cash in that fund to cover the debt service costs for the entire year and not have your cash go into the negative. The only other changes that have been made to any fund balance since this audit was actually completed is that at your November 4th meeting, you took action to adopt a budget amendment to appropriate some money out of the Economic Development Fund for the hiring of the economic development staff. But there have been no other changes since then. So as you go forward into your next meetings, if there's ever any budget amendments that are appropriating fund balance from the general fund, just understand it'll be taken away from the available fund balance here. And then any actions that are taken from now leading up to budget would be broken out for you to realize this is what you actually have to work with going into the budget cycle for FY26.
Could I get you to clarify? So if I understand what you're asking is for us to hold in the unassigned fund balance an approximate amount of what we estimate that last 3 months sales tax revenues will be, because there will be a lag. When it finally does come in, then we can replenish the unassigned fund balance.
That's correct. So
Okay.
if you look at this education debt fund and the breakdown of the fund balance categories, we put the debt premiums from the bond issuance in 2023 into this debt fund to
Okay.
pay down a couple of the first years of debt, so we
Okay.
didn't have to increase the tax rate. So this 9.4 million that's in the assigned fund balance is the only reason this total fund balance for this fund this year is not showing a negative unassigned $6 million fund balance. If that $9 million was not there, your unassigned fund balance would have shown at a much higher rate.
While we were waiting for the sales tax money to
Yes.
come in.
Yes.
Okay. I'm with you.
That's getting into the weeds of how all the categories work, but I think it's important for the board to understand that. So, yes. Okay, very quickly, we'll go over the water and sewer fund. They recognized operating revenues of $77.4 million, and their operating expenses were $72 million. Of that, operating expenses includes their depreciation of around $30 million, which is higher than it's been in the past because Yadkin actually came fully online and recognized as a total asset. Their non-operating revenue and expenses were $4.3 million, and they showed a net increase in their net position of $17 million. So this is a net position statement for them with comparison over time, and I wanted to point out, like if you looked at FY23 for their total operating expenses here, they were only at $55 million. But in '24, they're up to 72, but I want you to realize that 72 includes depreciation expense now that Yadkin's fully online, and to show that increase in depreciation expense, you would expect to see that to be their new norm year over year for their total operating expenditures. Outside of their operating income, they recognized investment earnings of about $8.1 million. Their interest and fees on debt or debt-like agreements was around $13 million. We have a joint venture with Catawba River, so each year we have to book the value of the asset for our half of the share of that joint venture, and we recognize the loss this year, and that is attributable also because of the assets of Catawba River depreciating out as well year over year for the actual plant themselves and the reservoirs and all the assets that belong to the joint venture. The contributions that were recognized, the $17.2 million, this actually includes system development fees that we received from developers. And then also contributions includes donated assets. So when we actually take over a subdivision or a development that's completed, any of the water and sewer lines that the developers actually put into that development becomes part of our system. So we recognize those as contributions, as assets into the system. And then transfers in from other funds. This is funding that you have approved through either ARPA or an ARPA investment dollars actually for certain water and sewer projects to be funded. So their total net position ended at around $435 million.
But could you go back? This is not really a question, it's kind of a note, or maybe a question how it happened. I noticed a significant bump over the past 2 years in investment income. So
Yes.
who's ever picking the investments, maybe they ought to start a financial counseling business. But if you look at a negative figure back in 22, 21 COVID years, so that probably explains
Right.
why that blew up. But 8 million in investment income is a significant amount
Yes,
to bolster
it
the
is.
system.
It is. And part of that for them, for the past couple years, has been attributable to still having bond proceeds in a bank account that we're earning interest on, as well as the market as a whole for the past fiscal year was at a very high level, and we recognize significant investment earnings as compared to the past. And I cannot control the market conditions. So next year, if you see
Sure
it
you
go
can.
down, we're still
Sure
picking
you
good
can.
investments.
Is that also an account, that investment account that the state treasurer's office directs? Or do you, who actually directs those investments?
I do.
You do? You missed your call.
But I have to do it based on state
Yeah,
statutes.
I want to make
Oh,
sure
okay.
you're clear
So
that it
they
has
tell
to
you
be,
what you- okay.
it has to
Yes.
follow all the state rules.
Like
as
I
far as-
can't just go and pick
You're not-
stocks.
you're not
Beverly's not
buying-
out there
you're not
rolling the
buying
dice in
crypto with
Vegas.
this money,
I mean,
right? Okay.
Right.
So
It
what
is
is it-
very safe, secure, liquid investments
is
based
it-
on general statutes.
Is it bonds mainly? Is it
Federal agencies, commercial papers, money market accounts mainly.
any Union County bonds?
No, we don't buy our own bonds.
You can't buy your own bonds? Thank you.
Madam Chair. Beverly, I've just got a quick question here. So you said that, just looking at this slide here, that the contributions represented here are mainly from system development fees. Did I understand that correctly?
It is system development fees and donated capital from
Okay.
developers. So when they finish a project, all the water and sewer lines based on linear footage is added into the assets that we own as part of that system for water and sewer lines that we maintain. So I
Gotcha.
don't have the breakdown in front of me. I could get you the breakdown if it's cash versus non-cash, actually. I can look.
I'm gonna go on a limb and tell you that of that 17 million, that most of that is not system development fees. We're not collecting 12, 15 million in system development fees. We're probably collecting anywhere from
6.5
6 to
million.
9.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yes.
most of that's going to be the value of the water and sewer infrastructure.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So actually, the breakdown was about 6.5 million in system development fees and about 10.3 million in contributions of assets from developers.
And just for clarification, for anyone maybe in attendance in the meeting or watching at home, the system development fees is not some kind of arbitrary number that the board sets. There's a formula involved in determining, how much system development fees we can charge.
That's correct.
And some of that is based off of, like depreciation, if I understand correctly, with some of our, infrastructure and assets. Is that also correct, Beverly?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So one thing that I was questioning and looking at this slide is, under the contributions, row there in 2022, that number sort of jumps out. And I realize that you may not have the numbers in front of you, but I was going to ask for perhaps a little bit of context there as to why that number was so much higher in '22, if you happen to know it.
Not off the top of my head, but I can get you the breakdown for all of these years for the contributions that are system development fee cash versus the assets that we're acquiring.
My recollection is that actual year, we did, I believe, get over 10 million in system development fees that year, I believe. And now Beverly can confirm that breakdown. There was a year.
There was one year we got us.
There was one year we had a large amount of system development fees, and then, of course, it went back to normal, which is between 6 and 8 million. But there was a year that we collected significantly more.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I would just, if we can get some confirmation on that, I certainly appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions from anyone? Okay, thank you. And it is a great opportunity to say that we had no audit findings. I'm very proud of this county, this organization, and the work that goes into that.
Madam Chair, if I can just say real quick, this is not a question, but more of a comment. Well, first of all, Commissioner Sides, please don't, talk Beverly and our financial staff here into seeking other job opportunities, because they do a great job. And the fact that we didn't have any findings in our audit certainly speaks to the volume of great work that you and your department do. So thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for the effort that you guys make for us.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Could not agree more. Next on our agenda is item 25-027, Economic Development Presentation. I will recognize Patrick Nyland, our Deputy County Manager, concerning this presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In November of 2024, we started our own Union County Economic Development Department. Fortunately, we were able to bring Ron Mall and Rachel Holtzman on. So they're here to talk a little bit about what they've been up to the last couple months, to talk a little bit about market conditions, a little bit about economic development, and then we do have a few requested action items for the board at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to Ron and Rachel.
There. My staff will affirm that technology and I are not the best of friends, so.
Well, then we have a lot in common.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Manager Matthews, first thing I want to do is just express my gratitude for the confidence you have placed in me, Rachel, and Megan in allowing us to help create this new Department of Economic Development here at Union County. So very sincere thank you. Tonight on the agenda, what I'd like to cover is just a few main points. One, the mission of our office, the team, the main functions of the office, some of the tools that we use, and share our near-term and long-term goals. And then at the end, ask for your direction on some specific action items. Economic development, the mission that drives us is, again, really, economic development is a cohesive strategy to increase tax base, create jobs that improve the quality of life for all of Union County's residents. Again, create the jobs, increase the tax base that positively impacts the quality of life. Every project that we're able to land, and most importantly for me, every job that we see created, those are families sustained by very well-paying wages. The team here on top there, as your director, is me. I have been here in Union County for almost 20 years now, doing economic development, mainly focusing on existing industry, and I enjoy that. I enjoy just the whole process. I enjoy when we're able to win a project and we'll see those jobs created. My assistant director, Rachel Holzman, has been with us. We've been colleagues for almost 3.5 years now. And we were able to hire Rachel before she even graduated from NC State. So, and we got to know her when she was an intern at the Union County Cooperative Extension. So, and then also, our business manager, Megan Gibson, been with us for about a year. Megan brings a unique combination of experiences and skills. She has municipal government experience through the Mecklenburg County court system, and then also private sector manufacturing, accounting and manufacturing HR experience with a company right here in Union County. So that's our team. And no, I won't expect you to read all that. But basically, what enables us to do the work that we do is economic development law. And economic development law in the state of North Carolina has actually been with us for about 100 years. It was founded, or at least first drafted in 1925. And it specifically describes the tools that we can use to achieve economic development. Some of those tools, just a few highlights here, our department is able to purchase and/or option land or buildings. We can develop speculative buildings and establish industrial parks. We can extend or upgrade utilities, and we can sell or lease land or buildings. And we do a mix of all of those. One of the main tools that we use, and the one that everybody is most familiar with, is economic incentive grants. We're able to offer those under some specific conditions. First, the project must be competitive in its site selection. The project must produce capital investment in personal and/or real property. Basically, the real property is the land and the buildings that are constructed, and the personal property is just another term for the manufacturing or process equipment that's installed in those structures. The project has to either create and/or retain jobs. And this is something that I always remind everybody that the incentive grants that we issue are performance-based, and they are in a they are in a contract between the municipality and the companies. So the companies have to meet certain thresholds of investment and job creation before they can even apply for an incentive grant payment. And then also I have to remind myself to never use the term tax rebates, because tax rebates in North Carolina will get you in trouble. What they are incentive grants backed by the performance-based property tax payment. I'm sorry, they are, the incentive grants are basically what I just described. They're a contractual agreement between the municipality and the company. They're not a rebate. One of the main functions of the office is taking care of the companies that we already have. In the economic development world, it's been a fact for many decades that approximately 75% of all new jobs and capital investment is a result of projects coming from our existing industries. So it's very important to keep tabs on those existing industries and help them grow. So how do we do that? Basically, there's no better tool than an on-site, face-to-face visit with a company. No better way to keep your finger on the pulse and also identify potential projects of expansion and job creation. We also offer seminars on a variety of topics, and those topics are always selected by the companies. It's just not me pulling something out of the air. I always ask our companies, what's a front burner issue for them? Workforce development, it's a given that all companies are always looking to improve the skills and talents of the people that they have working for them. And also when a company is able to expand or we land a new company, workforce development is a front burner issue. And we are pleased to work with our partners at the Union County Public Schools, for example, like in the Job Ready program and the Career and Technical Education, that I believe Career and Technical Education is reaching down into, I know they go into the middle school, but I believe they're even starting presentations in some of the higher elementary schools to convey the message to those young folks that careers in manufacturing and other commercial type work is a handsome career. Also, the wage survey. About every other year, we do a comprehensive wage survey amongst our companies that tells us, what are the current wage levels and what level of benefits that they're paying. At this point, I'm going to ask my Assistant Director, Rachel Holzman, to come up and talk about industrial recruitment. Thank you, Rachel.
So while Ron is all over the county working with all of our local industries that are already existing here, I do a lot of traveling. My traveling consists of domestic and international, primarily in Europe, and that's to attend different trade shows. So we have different focus areas for our recruitment. Aerospace, as you guys have all heard of, is a major sector that we focus on within manufacturing. So we travel to the different shows that specialize and bring all these companies together. We meet with them to try and recruit them and tell them how wonderful Union County is and all the great things that we can offer. So I spend a lot of time talking about Union County, and I love having that opportunity. When I'm not at trade shows, I attend a lot of conferences and site selector summits. This gives me the opportunity to network with our partners that know about these projects firsthand. So before they come across our desk and in our office, they hit our site selectors, which are like brokers almost, who get these projects from the companies direct, and they help find the best location for them. And then conferences, of course, to network with all of our other partners that help make the transition into Union County a little bit easier, whether it is a general contractor or a grading company or what have it. I also work on the marketing as far as our, promoting to our international and domestic clients. I help put the message out, and now with our lovely communications department, get to work with them and get to promote what Union County is and why it's a great place to be. I also submit our requests for informations and for proposals through the state system or any other company that reaches out to us firsthand, submit a specific site or building that we may have available that we think would fit all of their requirements. Hopefully we get a site visit out of our proposal that we submit to them, so I help facilitate all of those visits, coordinate the people that they need to speak to that is specific to them and their interests, and then of course help with all of our site readiness programs. And key partners that I work with is EDPNC, Economic Development Partnership for North Carolina. That is a 501c3 arm off of the Department of Commerce. So they are linked, but it has private funding as a part of it. All projects will go to the state primarily first, and then they'll disseminate that down to the different counties that they think will make a good fit. So I work very closely with them. I travel with them to all of our trade shows, and they're a fantastic partner of us. So I'm always calling on them. We also work with our utilities and our different co-ops across, the statewide programs, but then all the programs that we have here in Union County as well. And then, of course, with all of our private industries. So, thank you. Back to you.
If you
Nope.
would you
Not
cover,
yet.
if you don't mind, would you cover
Yes, so some of our key targets that we're also working on, we've expanded some from our former 4 tenants. We have 5 focus areas that we're looking at now. We're adding retail. That was still a component that we had focused on previously. Retail Strategies is a third party that we had contracted with for the city of Monroe. They had worked with Monroe for about 9 years, so a couple different contracts. We brought in a couple other municipalities over the years. Indian Trail had participated, and most recently Wingate had been brought on to this contract. The way Retail Strategies works is more of a regional concept, so looking at a county is a little bit easier than a specific municipality with its, unique boundaries. When you're looking at how people travel, say, down 74, you're going through so many different municipalities and townships that it's really hard to create a very specific recruitment strategy for such a smaller area. So what we're proposing is bringing Retail Strategies back, but for a county-wide offering. This just, helps, like I said, with all the recruitment efforts, being able to create a more firm boundary when we're looking at our county is easier for Retail Strategies to present to all the, to the Targets, to the Wegmans, to the whomever you're interested in. And so it's just a little bit easier for them to do that.
Does that mean you're going after a Krispy Kreme?
While very popular, I would love that. So, hopefully they're interested in a little bit more, and then food systems. As you guys know, I'm very dedicated to our food systems, so I'm happy Ron has put me back on with the food systems. So engaging again with the barn. I think it's having a slight name change right now, but you guys know it as the barn right now. And so Union County Food Innovation Center. I read it in the Enquirer Journal earlier today. Okay, he's got it. So anyway, sorry, I spilled the beans on that. So working back with our food industrial program, and so this expands past just the barn project. This expands to industrial components of the agriculture system. So like you've heard, prior for the past couple of years, once it's out of the ground, once the crops have been harvested, how can economic development come in and support that value-added processing here in Union County, keep those dollars local before it goes back out into the market? I think that's what
Thank you. And you can see why I'm glad that Rachel is part of the team. So, also, in addition to the retail and the food systems, the other 3 targets or sector targets, precision manufacturing, again, that has paid the freight for many decades, and there's still a lot of great opportunities in that, and we will continue to pursue those. Office headquarters. If you recall, back in November, you all supported and issued an economic development incentive grant to Cell Ethics for their office headquarters that is now all the sites being cleared right there in Stallings. $17 million project, 85 jobs. So that really opened my eyes to the idea that there's got to be other opportunities for that to land those folks. We brought them from Mecklenburg down here to Union County. So excited about exploring that. And then healthcare. Obviously, we have 2 very significant hospitals in Union County. So we have to consider, well, what are the ancillary offices, professional offices, medical offices that hospital attracts? So again, pursuing those thoughts. This setup has really blossomed in our minds and in our strategies since we've been under the county wing. So, thank you. Some typical incentives that we use, a lot of these you'll be familiar with. From the state, I'll touch on a couple of these. The 1ANC Fund is a discretionary grant administered through the governor's office that is based on job creation. So job creation with a new company coming in or an expanded company. Then also, building reuse is an interesting tool that is offered through the North Carolina Rural Center. We have used this over the last 10 years, probably 3 or 4 times. What it is, it provides a direct grant of money that's used to refurbish or retrofit an older industrial building. So it's targeted at manufacturing. The best example I can give is Hamilton Drywall. We were able to get, I believe, $250,000 that helped them on like a $10 million upfit. But as we know, every dollar helps. Customized training, again, working with our resource partners through the community college system. They are just a fantastic partner, and companies always need training for their employees. Local, we have the standard grant that is based on capital investment paid out over 5 years. Magnet is a little bit different, a little bit expanded on that theme. And then over on the side, it says municipal. One of the new ways of thinking that we are entertaining is that, traditionally our incentive program has always been, okay, the project's got to be at least a $2 million for existing or $3 million for new. We're realizing that there are projects that are maybe, half that amount, but still maybe have a 10 or a dozen really good jobs attached. So again, I just wanted to share that. We're expanding our thinking. We don't have it defined yet, but again, just we're able to entertain these thoughts more so than ever. So looking forward, it's important to have a plan. So for over the next 2 years, there are 7 key objectives, and 3 of those are front burner. The ones represented in green are our near-term priorities. And the one that I'm going to, Rachel's already touched on retail strategies, but the other 2 I just want to touch on momentarily. Municipal engagement. It is so important that we go out to all of the municipalities and listen, ask questions and listen, understand what their economic development goals are, what their objectives are, and then absorb that and figure out how can we help. How can we help? The last thing we're going to do is come out and go to a municipality and say, we know what you need, here it is, like it or lump it. We're not that type. So what we're looking to do is hold an economic development municipal summit in March, where we invite, I don't have the specific date yet, but we'll invite the municipalities, have it facilitated, and basically ask those questions, record those responses, take that information back, create a plan. Also, the advisory board. We are so excited about developing a Union County Economic Development Advisory Board that has a lot of different sectors represented. So again, that's on the front burner. So what we need from you is board direction on the following items. We would like to return and share with you specific recommendations on the advisory board, including the board makeup and meeting schedule. We will come back also, develop standard language for the contract with retail strategy so that we can deliver those specialized retail marketing expertise on a countywide basis. And then, of course, come back to you with a specific date and the agenda for the Municipal Economic Development Summit. With that, I would be happy to, please.
Just a few things to follow up on. The name change. BARN stands for Building and Agricultural Resources and Nutrition, which has been our working concept since the beginning of this project. now that we're past concept into an actual facility, it's hard to explain what that means in terms of an actual location. So the state grant that we got from the General Assembly for $5 million, it's actually called the Union County Food Innovation Center, and we think that makes more sense now that it's a building. You all will be getting a comprehensive update on the barn at the retreat, so that is going to be presented as part of that, but you get a sneak preview of it tonight. And then in regard to the municipal summit, I came from a municipality, and there's a lot of things that small towns don't have the ability to do. And with Ron and Rachel now on a countywide basis, part of it is listening, but it's also educating. A lot of the municipalities are dealing with the residential industrial split, 90-10. There are opportunities we see that we can help those municipalities address that, because we think a lot of them do want to address that too. So that's another point of that summit, is to say, here are some of the strategies you all can use to help get that tax base, because residential is service requirement heavy. So it benefits their local communities to diversify their tax base too. So I can answer any questions, but I just wanted to clarify on a couple of those things.
Mr. Nyland, maybe,
Yes, sir.
well, maybe, you tell me who to address this to. So the barn is now the Union County Food Innovation Center, UCFIC. So it's UCFIC now, is what we're going to call it, right? Okay.
It's a proposal, but obviously it'll be presented
All
to
right.
the board
Okay.
for support.
A couple questions.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to, if you could, give us an update on where exactly the UCFIC stands as of today. The project, where we
We are-
stand as far as moving dirt and getting
We're still
permitted.
in designing, the development design phase, but you will be getting a comprehensive update in 2 weeks at the retreat. So we don't have a presentation planned tonight. but
No,
you
that's
will-
fine. I just wanted to ask you, okay. So we're still waiting for final design, and then the next step would be permit process. And
We will get to a guaranteed maximum price with the contractor. That's when all the numbers need to align.
Okay.
Once that happens, then they will start going forward with permitting the project.
okay. Can you explain to me the chain of command for the Food Innovation Center? Ms. Holtzman is involved, you're involved. How are responsibilities shared for the project?
So there will be a facility manager.
Right.
She was our local foods coordinator, Jessica King. She has been moved into that position. So when the facility opens, she will be in charge of day-to-day operations.
Day-to-day, okay.
Rachel, being economic development, she will be in charge of trying to market that facility and use that facility to try to attract other businesses to that area. Some of that food, I'm sorry, what did you call them? Food systems development.
Okay.
It's like the aerospace cluster, but it's focused around food systems.
Okay. So basically, it's your baby until the thing is built and ready to go, and then Ms. Holtzman's job is to fill it up.
I would say Jessica's job is to fill it up. Rachel's job is
Okay.
to use it to promote how hopefully
So both of them
successful it
are
is.
working to fill it up?
Yes.
With clients? Okay. But basically, during the construction, pre-design, construction, you're the contact as far as that
I've
goes?
been involved in all of the design meetings. Our cooperative extension, Andrew Balcom, Jessica King, they've been involved the whole time. Obviously, Rachel was involved early on. We're glad she's back involved again. So it's a team effort. It's not
Okay.
anyone's baby. Cooperative extension and economic development do fall under my area of supervision, so that's why
Okay.
I'm more involved in this, on this project.
So-
Thank you, Patrick. I'm going to ask that we move on because we are going to have a deeper dive into the barn project at the retreat. I believe Commissioner Helms had some questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not really questions, just a couple of brief comments. First of all, thank you for the update. This has been great because, we've sat up here and we've talked numerous times about how we need, additional commercial, industrial, whatever other than residential, simply because of the 90-10 split that the county sees in regards to residential versus everything else. So first of all, thank you very much for the update. I really appreciate the efforts, and this is, I think, a really good thing for our county, because now, we've got dedicated folks that can focus in on developing that 10%, and hopefully we can get to a spot where we're, and certainly not in 4 or 5 years probably, but maybe eventually we can get into a better spot where we're sitting more like 65-35, something like that. We can hope, right? So yes. So thank you very much for your efforts. The one question I have is, do we need a motion then for these items?
All of this will come back with the exception of the Municipal Economic Development Summit. We just want to know we have the board support to move forward with planning that event. The other 2 items, we will come back with what we are proposing as the structure of that advisory group. So not necessarily who from a person standpoint, but what organizations we want represented. And then the contract will come back as a consent item, just like you would normally see on any other contract that the county executes.
Well, you know what? I think we just make it official, and I'll just make the motion then that we approve the 3 action items here being requested, and I'll open it up for the board comments.
Yeah, I just want to comment that, the 90-10 split, 90% residential, 10% commercial industrial, we all know that this is a major, major concern for Union County and our tax base. So thank you for your presentation. We're so happy to have you on board here with the county. We know the amazing work that you do. We get to see you quite often with projects coming to our county. So thank you for everything that you're doing. We definitely support this. I do, would like to encourage you. I don't know if you've already thought about the advisory board, how many members you might want to have. Is it going to be, make sure it's an odd number. We've run into that before. Make sure it's an odd number, and, I love the idea of working with each municipality, whether they have a seat at the table or not on the advisory board. A certain percentage of maybe industry leaders, definitely, look at all the different aspects to make this, a really good comprehensive advisory board. But definitely want to support this to move forward, and we're only in January and you've hit the ground running, so great job.
Yes, I'm excited about this opportunity as well. Just one suggestion. On your circle chart, your circle display, I would suggest or recommend that the Food Innovation Center be green as well, since we are in the design process.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, really good feedback. Thank you, everyone. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Thank you all.
Okay, the next item of business is item 24-0-029, Senior Nutrition Update. I want to once again recognize Deputy County Manager Patrick Ryan. Welcome back.
Thank you. You get a lot of me tonight. That's what happens when you're out sick one day. They put your name on everything. This is to provide a brief update from our discussion in December. There were a number of questions that were asked. There were some unknowns. We still have some unknowns, but wanted to give you all a quick update on kind of where we're at right now. There was a lot of discussion last time about Union County Public Schools, some of our churches, community partners, and what we have found out is there is no simple answer to any of this. A lot of what the schools do falls under federal regulations. A lot of what we do fall under certain federal regulations, and they don't match from time to time. So we have had numerous discussions with the schools about opportunities, and at this point, it's still going to take some work. We don't know that there's a silver bullet that will solve everything, but they have some requirements on who they can donate to, and Union County Senior Nutrition is not one of those. So it's going to take some follow-up conversations with them to see if there is a path to where we can work together to try to solve this problem. Churches and community partners, same way. A lot of churches do have their own programs. So I think we need to better understand what is currently being offered in the community to see if there are ways that they can either support what we are doing or we can support what they are doing. But that is going to take some time and effort to do it, which is, it's good. It's conversations that should happen, but they don't happen overnight. Sponsorship opportunities donation, this is one we've actually been working on for a couple months, and I got to give Janet Payne and her staff a lot of credit. A lot of individuals want to donate to the senior nutrition program, and we haven't had a mechanism for them to be able to do that, whether that be people from the public or our own staff. We do a fundraising campaign every year, and there's a number of organizations that they can donate to. Senior nutrition will now be one that they can if they do want to support that. So we do think that is something that can be put in place pretty quickly. Obviously, we don't know how much it's going to generate from a revenue standpoint, but it's another option we have. The chart you're seeing in front of you is where some of these folks live that are currently getting meals delivered, congregate sites, which are the ones that they come to a central location to receive a meal, are waiting list clients, and a combination of the two. And just wanted to show you this because it's pretty representative of the population of the county. There is no one municipality that has necessarily more percentage than their general population. So it is a countywide issue we're dealing with, and we're going to need probably multiple solutions to deal with it. But you'll be provided with this, and again, there's nothing really to do with this right now. Just wanted you to see kind of where these folks currently are receiving meals and where they stand on the wait list. This is a map representation of what you just saw. Again, there's obviously you have more people in your municipalities, but it is a countywide need. Short-term program expansion. Janet talked a lot about options we had last time, and a lot of those options required additional staff or additional contracting capabilities with our current vendor. So we sat down and we looked at what could we do quickly with our existing staff. And what you're seeing here is we can add 110 warm meal clients with our existing staff that would be able to go out and verify these individuals and deliver them from a home, from a congregation site. So these are all within a certain radius of one of those warm meal sites. This is all we feel we can do with our current staff. You can see the fiscal year 25 cost would be $68,000. On an annual basis, that would be $254,000 for fiscal year 26. This is not something we would want to do and then pull right back out from under them July 1.
It's an additional $254,000 on top of what we already,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
And-
And what do we pay currently?
I think it's a little over $1 million, Janet. A little over $1 million. And so the 68,000 and the 254, we started fiscal year 25 showing a deficit. And the way we have been dealing with that deficit as people come off for various reasons, a death or they've moved out of their house, we are not adding those folks back on. So we are closing the gap, and we'll get to budget by the end of this current fiscal year. But planning for next year, if we were going to add these folks, we would want to plan to add the shortfall and the additional 110. So again, that was a quick update. But again, that is what we think we could do in a short period of time with funding that we have available for this year. Obviously, next year, it's a bigger ask that the board has to decide what you all are comfortable with.
So you've identified that you could potentially take on 110 more people. How many were on? It was 500 and something on the wait list. 500,
572.
572.
And that's December of '24, so it's probably changed a little bit since then.
Okay. So without needing to hire more people, you could potentially start identifying 110 people that for 68,000 for the remainder of this year could be moved potentially off the wait list.
Yes, ma'am.
Without adding more staff.
That's a good point. I'm glad you made that. The staff initially has to verify eligibility, and then they have to do it every 6 months from that initial eligibility. So if you look at the 110 and the 326, it's about 450 people is what we think we can do on an annual basis with verification with existing staff. Anything higher than that, we would either need to contract for that service or hire additional personnel to do so.
Okay, so we currently have 326. Okay. And so with our current staff, we could possibly take care of 110 more
Yes, ma'am.
citizens. So the question that I had, I want to confirm, we have not identified who those 110 would be. We would have to begin that process, or to do home visits and determine eligibility?
We have determined 110 that we think, if they qualify, could be added.
But they may not qualify.
They may not. There are additional people kind of in that radius that can be served, so we do think that if only 95 of those, we could find an additional 15 that were within a certain distance of a congregate site that could be added.
Oh, okay, okay.
And we have talked a little bit about how we prioritize that 110, and what we'd probably do is look at the neediest of those folks and say, we're going to serve them first and then work our way down.
Okay. Have you prioritized those as of tonight, or
we
you
have
would have
not.
to begin that work?
We'd have to begin that work,
Okay.
and staff can get this done pretty quick. It would take us about 5 weeks. Initially, we would assign another staff member to help do the initial verification, knowing that that time in 6 months, we'd have to come back. But we do think we can do that and get everyone off the wait list if the board decided to do this in the March timeframe.
So even for the 326 that are currently being served, they have to be reevaluated every 6 months?
Yes, ma'am.
Everyone, okay.
Everyone that's in the program.
So for the 110, approximately how long would it take to vet those names and move them through the eligibility process and the home visits?
With the staff person we have, they can do 10 a week estimate. We do think we could allocate another staff member to that for the first 5 weeks. So we do think between 5 and 6 weeks, at 20 a week, we'd be able to get everyone in the 110 from the wait list to getting a delivered meal.
Without disrupting the 326 that are currently being taken care of?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Madam Chair? Patrick, just a quick question here. So I'm looking over the slide that you've got regarding clients served, waiting by municipality.
Yes.
So, first of all, thank you and staff for putting this together, because when we initially looked at the map, and you've got that, I think, in your presentation here. Yep, there you go. So, looking at this, the first thing that jumped out to me was, the potential for some sort of municipal partnership, with this program. And so, if you go back to the other slide, then there we go. Looking at the numbers, it certainly is spread out throughout the county, but there's a couple of numbers here that jump out at me. And the first one is under the column cumulative clients and active, cumulative clients active and wait list. And so what we're looking at there is a total of 205 for the city of Monroe. And if you do the math, that comes out to be 20% of the overall number, if I've got my math correct, maybe some change. And then the other number that jumps out to me is Indian Trail. So with 130, so that if you do the math there, you're looking at about 13.3% of the overall number there. To me, I mean, and listen, and this might be a stretch, but this shows that there could be opportunity to at least have some conversations there with municipalities to determine if a partnership's feasible for the foreseeable future. And so I mean, I for one would be in favor of first looking at that, just to see if anything could be agreed upon. The other thing is that looking at, if you go back to the final slide there where you've got the numbers, there we go. So, looking at this, I understand what we're doing here. We're essentially proposing that we've got, if we make an investment of $68,000, then we could, add 110 warm meals for the duration of the fiscal year.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Through June 30th.
Through June 30th. And then the new fiscal year starts July 1. So what we're essentially looking at then is, if we were to do that, we're not just committing $68,000 because, as we've talked about in the past, this is a commitment. This is a long-term commitment. So it's not just a short-term commitment. So the $68,000 is essentially a Band-Aid. So it's a Band-Aid that fixes a problem in the short term, but it doesn't stop the bleeding, so to speak. And what it does do, though, is it's a Band-Aid that fixes a short-term problem but creates a long-term expectation. And so I think that we need to carefully consider, this, because I don't know that it's fair that we, make a decision and push forward with this and create that expectation and then, possibly not be able to fund that later. I think this is going to merit some additional conversation amongst the board. So I certainly appreciate, the information. It gives us something to consider, but I personally am not comfortable in taking action on this tonight.
So I want to go back to the UCPS conversation, because when we talked about this last time, my thoughts were, we have 53 commercial grade cafeterias that are preparing meals all throughout our whole county where all these pockets are. Can you give me some examples of what restrictions UCPS would have that who can they
Sure.
donate left remaining food to? Because it's my understanding most of it goes in the trash can at the end of the day. So can you talk to us about that, what you learned?
From our initial discussions with them, they have to donate to what's called a food distribution organization. Currently, they donate to 3 of those, the Community Shelter, Ground 40, and Turning Point. We are not considered an FDO, so that's why we can't. There are probably other community partners that could be considered an FDO, but it's got something to do with proximity to the location of the schools, how quickly you can get a meal, what kind of food it is. So that's some of what we run into, that they have restrictions on who they can donate to.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm happy to hear that there are some organizations receiving, that food. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for the information. I've had the opportunity, I have some flexibility in my time, so I volunteered as a deliverer. My wife does the chauffeuring and I do the delivering, and it is quite an eye-opening experience. I have 7 folks on my route, all the way from here in Monroe to up that away. I'm not going to divulge names, but I have one gentleman who has an old dog, and I use the term figuratively, old dog, because you can tell it's aged, and it's called, her name is Penny. So what I started doing was delivering dog treats along with this gentleman's meal. Last week we had salad, macaroni salad, broccoli salad, a little fruit cup, and milk. In seeing these folks and meeting them, it is very obvious, and this is particularly acute in our older citizens. This is a lifeline that keeps them in their house. Now, as you may have experienced with an older family member, one of their biggest fears is having to leave their home and go into some kind of institution. Meals, our in-home services are a lifeline to some of these folks that are holding on by their fingernails. Now, as Commissioner Helms mentioned, not only are we looking at $68,000 to make inroads in the waiting list this year, we are de facto committing at least $254,000 to continue the next year for these folks. But put aside the numbers. There is more of, in my mind anyway, there is more of a moral question to what does this county do for our older citizens that have paid their taxes, raised their family, worked a long life, and now they're in the twilight, and they are doing the best they can to continue in their homes, in apartments, and what have you, before other arrangements had to be made. So it's more than the funding. It's what are we, as a county, are we going to take care of these people and then decide to devote the resources necessary in order to do that? And I'd like to throw some other numbers to have you consider, because frankly, it's relatively the same context. We have a county jail, and we have guests in our jail. I did some investigation looking at our current county budget. 3 square meals, a cot, somewhere to sleep, and free and frankly unlimited health care. This county has a budget this year of $3,776,689. Now, there's no waiting list for meals at the jail. There's no waiting list for health services. But that's also mandated by law. We have to do that. This is not, this is a matter of the character of our county government in deciding that this is a priority that deserves the resources accordingly. And this is a personal statement. I am one of 5. This is just me. I have determined that I personally, on next year's budget that does not devote sufficient resources to eliminate the waiting list for senior meal deliveries and in-home services, I cannot and will not support that budget. I'm just going to go out on a limb that far. That, for me personally, is how serious I take this issue for our, as a elected representative of county government. And I'll leave it with making the motion that we follow through with diverting $68,000 from the current fiscal year budget for no less than 110 warm meal new clients from the waiting list, as determined through proper vetting. So I'll offer that motion to commit those funds.
Madam Chair? Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to commend Commissioner Sides, for spending the time to go out there and deliver those meals and really take an active stance on this issue. We've had a lot of discussion, on this topic since December, and this is a topic that I think is important to all of us because our seniors matter. They do. All of our residents matter. But with that understanding, I think that Commissioner Balcom kind of hit the nail on the head at one of our last meetings when we discussed this, when he said, government can't be all things to all folks. There's a limitation, to what government can do. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't consider, this item and have more discussion, but at least tonight, I can't support the motion. Thank you.
Yes.
I know, no member of this board wants to see anyone hungry. No member of this board wants to see anyone go hungry. I know that. The question is the means, how do we get there? How do we get to a place where everyone is well fed? And I just don't think that local government is the end-all to the problem, end-all solution to the problem. If we commit 68,000 now, it's reciprocal. It just keeps coming at us. And we're in a position now where we have 800 million debt. We're possibly looking at 400 million expenditures. We have some major decisions coming at us. And, my grandmother, and I didn't like to hear it, but she would tell me, haste makes waste. And she was right. And I think this would be more of a budgetary item. I think we should step back, take our time and look at this. Perhaps, I don't know the legalities of if this list can be shared with the different hospitality committees at the churches. I don't know what that looks like legally, but I do know that they seem to provide this type of assistance and fulfill this need better than I think we can in a local government entity. So that's really all I have to say. I can't support this amendment. I just think it's, as much as I would like to see everyone well fed, I just don't believe this is the answer. Thank you.
I'm going to agree with Commissioner Balcom. I think we are jumping at this very quickly. And as Commissioner Brian Helms also mentioned, my concern, a big concern of mine, is what's coming next down the pike for the county as a whole. Is it sustainable? Because I can't see giving someone food, them relying on it, and then us ripping it away. I think that is cruel. I think that is vicious, and I would rather somebody wait for a meal than us tell them, we're going to supply you with all your food, and then, sorry, you're not getting anything from us. I think that is just unnecessarily cruel. There's no doubt everybody on this board feels that our senior citizens should get taken care of. They deserve it. They absolutely deserve it. But we need to come at this at a very logical and strategic way so that we make sure that the ones that we are providing for have this resource available down the road, not just 6 months, but from years to come, because they can be on this list for years, and we need to make sure that we have sustainability with this. I think the best option is for us to wait until February when we have our retreat to dive in this a little bit deeper.
I agree. One of the things, while the commissioners were processing this and making their comments, it occurred to me it would be plus or minus April by the time we were able to vet these 110 names and begin delivering those meals. And by that time, we're in our budget season, and we're going to be preparing, for the next budget. I absolutely agree that our seniors are important and a priority, and it makes me very sad to think that there are 572 seniors in our community that are possibly qualified for senior nutrition and need meals delivered. But I also recognize that it sounds like part of that number, we don't know what percentage, may not qualify for those meals. So, our budget was set 6 or 7 months ago. I do not feel comfortable altering our current budget with one-time money. To get started, I think we need to go into our retreat and hear from every department and see where we can make this a priority in the next budget. But definitely, I don't feel comfortable starting with one-time funds.
Well, and also, Commissioner Merrill, is by the time the retreat rolls around, hopefully we can reach out to the municipalities and reach out to our local churches too that are in, if we can go back to the slide that had the Monroe, the Indian Trail, the larger churches in that area to see what they can help with to reduce that number. But we definitely need to reach out to the municipalities, Monroe, Indian Trail, those higher numbers, Stallings, Waxhaw, those bigger numbers. We definitely need to get in contact with them immediately and hopefully have an answer by the time our retreat rolls around. Hopefully they will, put some skin in the game, because those are their citizens too.
Sure. And regardless of what happens tonight, we will communicate with our community partners, our churches, and our municipalities. Obviously, they follow the same budget cycle that we do. So I think it's unlikely that they would be able to commit anything by February, but we can at least communicate the need to them.
Mm-hmm. I think most of the municipalities, I live in Stallings, so there are 32 seniors on the wait list in the community I live in. I think people install, and I'm just using them as the example, I think the municipalities would want to know how many seniors are in their community. I'm looking at Unionville. Unionville has 27 on the wait list. Waxhaw, 25. Indian Trail, 77. Hemby Bridge has 8. I know the people in these communities would want to know if there's people in their community or right down the road or in the same neighborhood that, are on this wait list. So I think, I don't expect to have an answer tonight, but I'm going to defer to Jason Kay to kind of, work with our staff and let us know, what information can we legally share? Are we able to share the names, the addresses with the municipalities or the faith-based organizations, or is that completely confidential and we can't share that information? So I don't expect an answer tonight, but I think we need to know that answer.
But even still, to make them aware and to help contribute to this program, I think that would be very beneficial. Again, and if everybody has a little bit of skin in the game, it doesn't hurt as much on one.
And, just like Economic Development made their presentation tonight, having those partnerships and liaisons with each municipality and sharing of that information is so important, because I feel like we're trying to eat an elephant right now. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do. So I think when Commissioner Balcom said haste makes waste, I would like to do this right. I would like to do it with the right partners. And I don't feel comfortable supporting one-time dollars tonight, not knowing how we're going to carry this over July 1. But I do think we need to make this, a big conversation during the budget planning. for the next fiscal year. That budget cycle is literally right around the corner. I know UCPS is already working on their budget. So, with that being said, we've got a motion on the floor. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, where exactly is the $68,000 coming from?
Right now, we would use what's called lap salary, and that's through resignations, retirements. We have some salary expenses that haven't been fully expended, so we would use that for this current fiscal year. Next year, those dollars at July 1 are 100% allocated, so it would have to be
Right.
another source of revenue.
Okay, so it's not dipping into the fund balance.
We don't think dipping into fund balance for this would be smart if
Okay.
that's what the board wants to do.
So are we anticipating asking the municipalities to include us in their next budget? Are we hoping they will come up with money prior to the end of the fiscal year?
I think it could be either. If some municipalities are willing to contribute this year, we can certainly consider that, but understand.
Why would we think a municipality would be willing to dip into their fund balance if we don't want to dip into ours?
We haven't asked the question, so I think until we ask the question, we don't know what municipality would want to participate, and they might not. We just haven't engaged them in the past on this.
Okay, I'd like to clarify where I was coming from with sharing of information with municipalities. It wasn't to ask for money out of their budget. My thought was there are organizations within their community that they might know of that would be willing to help get meals to these. Mine was more of a step up, let's find people to help feed the citizens in their community. And I'm sorry if I misled the board members. I absolutely had no intentions of asking the municipalities to alter their budgets. Now, if they choose to pitch in from their budget, but that honestly had not crossed my mind. I was actually looking for people in those communities that would want to help provide meals.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So, I'll clarify. That's exactly what I was thinking is, and not right now. I mean, I think that's completely unfair to ask of our municipal partners, other municipalities. But, I mean, let's face it, I mean, we're in the budgeting process now. I mean, everything that we're doing currently is gearing towards the end of this fiscal year and the beginning of a new fiscal year and the adoption of a budget. And so my thought process is, why not reach out to, Monroe? Why not reach out to Indian Trail? And I mean, we've got, 16 folks here from Weddington. Why not reach out to Weddington? I mean, even if it's $20,000, even if it's $10,000, even if it's $2,000, then that represents a community partnership, that may be sustainable for the future. Now,
Well, hold on.
sir,
Are you asking
I believe
them for
I
money?
believe I'm speaking. So what I'll say is that the $60,000, the $68,000 that we've got in unassigned salaries, we can't count on that, okay, as you mentioned. So
Especially if we fill the position.
correct. And so that's 100% allocated in the next fiscal year. So any kind of decision that we make, whether it be tonight or even for future budget, it comes with an expectation that we fund this long term. And so although we might have $68,000 today, we don't have it tomorrow. And so the funding for this has to come from somewhere. So where does it come from? It comes from, ultimately, as we saw in our financial report, 61% from property tax. So that's where we're getting, the funding, generally speaking, from the county. And so what we're looking at here is the potential, all things being equal, of, well, I mean, let's face it, we've got, as Commissioner Balcom said, we have a bond to pay for, we've got jail projects, and even if all that nets a neutral in our upcoming budget, even if, okay, if we look at even say $250,000, $500,000, $2 million to fully fund the program? That has to come from a source. So would Commissioner Sides be prepared then to raise property taxes, to pay for sustaining this program long-term? And if so, then that begs the question, what about the seniors that are on the fringe? Okay, what about those that don't qualify for meal service right now? All right, so we're going to raise taxes potentially on 260,000 people in the county, and we're going to hurt the seniors that don't currently qualify for meal assistance in an increased tax rate so that we can help out 500 people. Listen, again, all of us here want to do something for our seniors, but we have to act in the best interest of the whole. Thank you.
Well, hold on. How can you say it's going to take a tax increase to address this waiting list? And everybody else will say, well, we need to wait and see, and when we get into the next budget. I mean, you can't make that statement that addressing the waiting list is going to automatically cause a tax increase. That's unfair.
What you said is not fair, Mr. Sides. I did not hear Commissioner Helms say that by helping these seniors, we're going to have a tax increase. What he said was that we have so many needs right now, we're looking at a tax increase, and it would be uncomfortable to put something into the budget now that wasn't in the budget at the beginning of the year, and now fund something that would need to be ongoing without us truly knowing what every department and every county function is going to have. And I don't want to speak for Commissioner Helms, but I don't think he was saying that this would cause the tax increase. It would be a cumulative tax increase because there are so many needs facing us right now.
Did you ask me if I would support a tax increase in order to address the waiting list? Was that your question to me?
Through the chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what I did is I proposed a hypothetical that, if we're looking at this, I think that, again, we have to realize that we have so many needs, okay? The money has to come from somewhere. And so, yes, I think that the question has to be raised that if we set the expectation, or if there's a willingness to move forward with this at full funding, then that money has to come somewhere, or come from somewhere. And so where does it come from? Well, in order to fully fund, and I know we're not talking about that, per se tonight, but I believe that that's where this would head. And so in order to fully fund something like that, we may have no choice. And so if that's the case, would you support that?
Now, we're saying we don't know what the budget needs are going to be from all the departments, but we're saying in order to fund this fully, it's going to cause a tax increase.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I've already said that I support adequate funding in order to eliminate in the next fiscal year the waiting list for senior meals. Okay? I've already said that. The financial implications in the overall budget, which has many moving parts, I don't think it is fair to say that fully funding senior meals, what kind of a tax impact it would have at this point until we know the needs specifically in the budget process. But I will make my personal commitment for just myself that my wish is to see in the budget for next fiscal year adequate resources in order to eliminate the waiting list.
Okay, yes, Commissioner Helms.
I would just like to call the question.
Yep. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the,
Clarify the motion. We've talked a lot since then. Please clarify the motion.
Would you like to clarify your motion?
Is to direct staff to divert the $68,000 in order to begin the vetting process and delivery of meals to no less than 110 folks on the current waiting list. Jason, does that sound about right?
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. With that being said, I think I would like to tell staff that obviously this is important. We don't want to see people that want to have meals need meals. So I would say, you know, the budget season, each department is working on their budgets. So I think departments need to start, you know, getting their numbers together so that they can bring it on to the county manager's office for the next budget.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is 25-033, Request for Proposals, Legislative Lobbying Services. I will again recognize Deputy County Manager Patrick Nyland concerning this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have utilized our existing state lobbyist, Navigator LLC, since August of 2020. There's been some discussion with the board about possibly looking at going out to see who else may be interested in representing Union County. So this is the board's opportunity to talk about that. If you do want to move forward with a request for qualification, we would just need a motion to direct staff to put that out for you all.
Madam Chair? So, you know, obviously, it's been quite some time since we've looked at lobbying services. And I think that the board should recognize that what the landscape of Raleigh looks like today may be very different than what it looked like 2, 3, 4, even 5 years ago. You know, lately, we've seen numerous state bills, and those bills have, well, either negated or stood against this board's stance on certain hot-button topics like growth, alternate wastewater systems, building code changes, and, you know, even most recently, zoning, so the ability to downzone. And you know, I certainly realize that, you know, lobbying services only go so far, but I think that, you know, we're to a point where we should look at, you know, putting proposals together to see what other services are out there. Now, that doesn't mean that Navigator, you know, can't certainly, you know, put in for their proposals for lobbying services as well, but I think that we need to do some due diligence here. And so I'll go ahead and make the motion that, you know, we approve the request for proposals for lobbying services.
Any comments, questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Can you tell me the approximate amount budgeted this current year for these lobbying services?
That's $60,000.
Okay, $60,000. What accomplishments would you list from our lobbying efforts? I mean, we meet with our delegation and communicate on a regular basis. We have a county commission association, which lobbies on behalf of all the bodies in the state. Can you, and this may be hard to do off the top of your head, but what are we getting for our 60 grand a year is basically my question.
So I think that's the board's prerogative to say what we have received. I think from staff standpoint, we have seen a number of state grants over the last 4 or 5 years, the barn, 12 Mile Creek, some of the other water and sewer projects. So we have seen those direct allocations from Raleigh. I think the hard part is saying, was the lobbying service is directly responsible for that. I think, to your point, there are a lot of organizations that work on county's behalf. So it's really a question of you all. Are you happy with the lobbying services you're receiving? Because ultimately, they work for you, not staff.
Are you saying that our current lobbyist assisted with projects like the barn project?
We communicate with our current lobbyist about all the needs that the county has, and he then communicates that to our delegation. So from a direct responsibility, it's hard to say who is responsible for us getting all the state grants we've received, but we have communicated those needs to our current lobbyist, and he has communicated that to the delegation.
Okay.
Does the lobbyist report back to the county manager or to you or Clayton in regards to what he's been doing on a monthly, quarterly basis? So we know what we're getting what are we getting our bang for our buck? What are we getting out of them?
I would say Michelle, before she left, she was the point of contact. Since then, it's been Brian. They do provide a report of what's going on, but it is a general report that they share with all their clients. So we get that on a fairly, I would say, weekly basis when the General Assembly's in session. And then as there are specific things that either we are looking for or bills in Raleigh that directly affect us, there will be more communication specifically for those items.
I think part of my concern has been, I haven't seen the lobbyists since I got elected in 2022, and that was at a legislative breakfast. So, that's part of my concern is that, we're talking about $60,000 versus $68,000 to get started on senior nutrition, and I haven't seen our lobbyists. So I hope that we're getting our money's worth, but I definitely think, I definitely support this motion to start vetting what's out there and if it's a good match for Union County needs. Because it has been disheartening to see bills in Raleigh that were directly opposed to what Union County was trying to do. So we have the motion? Yes.
Sure, and I want to point out that, this is, I think, an opportunity for the board to see what's out there and decide, do you want to continue with this actual, you may make the decision that you don't want to continue with lobbying services for some period of time. That's really, I think, an opportunity for you to just say, reset. We want to figure out what's going on.
So you're saying, let's let everybody make their pitch, what they say they can do for us. I was thinking more, let's hold off on getting other proposals till we really decide if we need a lobbyist, rather than have everybody do their dog and pony show, and then we, basically on what they say they can do, we make a decision and we cut them a check. I mean, you feel that's better to actually let them?
I mean, I think it's important for you to see what's out there, and then you can make that decision. That's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And if you and your staff are the ones getting those weekly updates, our board is going to depend on you to let us know if it's worth it or not worth it, or if that's something that we could have done ourselves in-house. We're going to need to depend on you to let us know, because it sounds like you're getting weekly or monthly updates, we just didn't know.
Right, and then I think what's helpful too is, that you also give us direction on how much detail you want, because we've never really had the board get disengaged, which that's good, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's helpful for us at the staff level to know, well, how much detail do you want? Do you want a lobbyist to come quarterly? I mean, those are things that I think we want to understand what the board is trying to get as far as information.
Well, to me, a lobbyist does for us what we can't do ourselves, because they have some kind of special inroads, or they're able to sit down with other legislators, not our delegation. I would think we'd be able ourselves to communicate with our delegation, where it goes anywhere or not, who knows? But, I mean, that's what I figure a lobbyist for, is to do things that we couldn't do through our own relationships with legislators or what have you. If they can't do anything different than we can, or discovering for ourselves grant opportunities, then I challenge the need.
I agree. Does anyone on staff know when Union County entered? Because it seems like it was in the last several years that that the county budgeted, I thought it was $100,000 for the lobbying budget. But does anyone know when this started?
It's August 1st, 2020 is when we entered the contract.
No, not his contract, but when Union County started using a lobbyist. I know it was within the last 6 to 8 years.
We can find out that information, because
Okay.
I think at one point we actually had a federal lobbyist too, and that went away when some of the earmarks went away, but we can dig into it and find
I
out.
think that would be helpful, because if my memory is correct, I think there was an education issue between UCPS and the Board of County Commissioners that this budget occurred. So, if we're having good communications and relationships with our partners, maybe that need is no longer there. I don't know. But I would like for someone to get back to me to let me know when we started budgeting for a lobbyist, because I think it was around an education issue.
And I want to know success stories. I want them to say, okay, look, I got you that $5 million grant for the barn, and you guys didn't even know it existed. Well, $5 million, I would say, would pay for a lobbyist for a couple of years. But if they're, whatever, if it's more nebulous, I worked on this, or, you can't track it back to specific successes, deals, money they found, or they closed, grants they closed, that we wouldn't even have known about or had access to. Then I'd say we need to handle it ourselves.
Agree. So we have a motion on the floor to,
I think Mr.
Oh.
Key wanted to say a comment.
oh, yeah.
No, it's okay if we go on. I was going to respond to the chair's question. I do think that we did engage a lobbyist in the past on a more sporadic fashion, and then in 2020 it became a little bit more regular with a new and different lobbyist. But as your question called for, we can research and find out kind of our history of working with lobbyists in the past, and for what purpose and what time frame.
Yeah, because I'm thinking it was plus or minus 8 years ago. But I definitely could be wrong. So that information would be appreciated. And when you have it, you can just send us all an email. Thank you very much. So we have a motion on the floor to approve requests for proposals for lobbying services. All those in favor say aye. 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 Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next on our agenda is item 25-034, resolution in support of local legislation for Union County concerning local government zoning control and Session Law 2024-57, Senate Bill 382. I will once again
And for the last time.
recognize Deputy County Manager Patrick Nyland.
Thank you. On December 11, 2024, the General Assembly adopted Session Law 2024-57, also known as Senate Bill 382. A section of this bill, 3K.1, had some provisions for local governments regarding downzoning. It prevented us from doing certain downzonings. On December 16th, this board adopted a resolution in support of repealing that section of Senate Bill 382. This is another option that the board has to ask for an exemption through resolution from the provisions of Senate Bill 382. So that is what is in front of you tonight. It would be asking for a local bill that would exempt Union County from those provisions.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first of all, I'm in favor of adopting this resolution. You know, I think that we all understand, and I believe that our local delegation also understands that this is not just a Union County problem. Okay, this is not just unincorporated Union County. This bill, more specifically, this last provision, affects every municipality and every local government within the state that does any kind of, you know, zoning or planning. This could adversely affect them, you know, I've personally had some discussions with you know, other leaders there in our municipalities within our borders, and they share concerns, you know, with this. There is you know, a lot of consensus there that amongst different municipalities and our board that you know, we should go and petition our local delegation to make some sort of local bill or exemption. This resolution is a little bit different than the previous one that we adopted back in December, in the fact that we're asking for specific action. And you know, ultimately, you know, this last provision of SB 382, you know, I think it's important, and this is, you know, in our information here, but I think it's important for everybody to understand too that this doesn't just limit local authority and local government and local powers that the government may have. This limits the voice of the people to actually, you know, express their preferences and policy through their elected officials. And I think, you know, at a very basic level, you know, some sort of action has to take place here, you know, to either get local exemption, local bill, something for not only the county, but also every municipal partner that we've got, you know. And I would encourage, assuming that, you know, we take action and pass this resolution tonight, I would encourage the municipalities to adopt something very similar. You know, many hands make light work, and again, this is a community, an entire state issue. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments, questions? Do you want to make a motion, or? Yes.
I would like to echo what Commissioner Helms just stated and say that I think, you know, these decisions should be made as close to the citizens as possible, not mandated from the state. So I think it's very disrespectful to the citizens to mandate this sort of action. But just out of curiosity, if they were to make an exemption, is this something that they have to vote on? That's a 50% rule? Or how does that work?
Go ahead, Jason.
So all local laws, even though they have specific local effects, they still are voted on by the entirety of the General Assembly. Some bills at the General Assembly are denominated as public bills. Public bills apply the same statewide everywhere as this one did, to borrow an old election phrase from Murphy to Mecklenburg to Monroe to Manio. It's the same everywhere. If you have a local bill, that still needs to be voted on by the state General Assembly, both House and Senate. But in those instances, the local delegation generally has a little bit more flexibility and authority to craft that and seek the support of their colleagues, although they still must get a majority of their colleagues.
So this would have to be sponsored by one of our Union County representatives, one in the House and one in the Senate.
That is generally the way that local bills come about. The legislature moves in mysterious ways, but generally you get either House or Senate or both, or your entire delegation or some portion of it. Not all local delegations are uniform on local bills, although generally they tend to have agreement amongst themselves about what they want to do.
Is it, if one member of our delegation decides to be against the local legislation, boom, it's gone, right?
Not necessarily so. It would be up to the rest of the local delegation members to determine how they wanted to handle that dissent. It's not uncommon in counties or cities across the state that you have all R's or all D's with one dissenting member of the delegation, and they handle that dissent differently. But that's up to them to determine.
Is the local legislation, I'm trying to think somewhere, is it not subject to the governor's veto?
Generally,
No, not
local
a
bills are a carve-out from the governor's veto. That was part of the grand compromise that came about when North Carolina got a governor's veto, one of the last states in the country back in the early 90s, to get that veto. Local bills are exempted from that.
So if you recall, Commissioner Soggs, in 2020, when DPI was not allowing seniors to have access to their numerical grade, our local representatives, Union County representatives, wrote a local bill for UCPS to offer that option to the class of 2020. So that's how that got passed. Okay, so do we have a motion?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'll make the motion that we adopt the action requested here and adopt the resolution in support of legal legislation for Union County concerning local government zoning control and session law 2024-57, that's SB 382, and direct the county manager or his designee to distribute the resolution to all municipalities located in Union County.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda, so I will turn it over to county manager's comments.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I do want to just let the board know, and I'm sure you already have this, but for public information, we have a joint meeting scheduled with the City of Monroe on January 31st. I'm sorry, January 30th. Is it 30th? 30th, I'm sorry, January 30th at 6 p.m. That will be at the Bazemore Adult Active Center. But just letting you know that we are moving forward with a joint meeting with the City of Monroe. Thank you.
I will start at this end. Commissioner comments, Commissioner Sides?
I'd just like to say, God bless our president, Donald J. Trump.
Commissioner Helms?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you to my colleagues. You know, we've had some spirited debate and discussion up here tonight, and certainly, you know, appreciate each and every one of you and everyone's opinion. Thank you to our staff members. You know, the weather has been kind of treacherous, I guess, this afternoon, this evening. Thank you guys for putting in some long hours and sticking out the entire meeting with us. Please be careful going home. Everybody drive safe. And certainly, you know, wish everyone a good night. Thank you.
I would like to extend a thank you to staff and commissioners who were able to attend the Martin Luther King dinner Saturday. Bishop Gardine has been a wonderful asset to this board and is so very active in our community. And we had a wonderful dinner with churches being represented from all over Union County, and they fed us good, and we had a wonderful guest speaker honoring Dr. Martin Luther King. So I just want to thank Bishop Gardine for that invitation, and I thank the county manager, Commissioner Balcom, and Commissioner Brian Helms for joining us for that really nice dinner and remembering yesterday as Dr. Martin Luther King. Commissioner Helms.
The other Commissioner Helms. I'd like to again recognize Beverly Lyles, and her department. Congratulations on a clean audit. I think that speaks volumes to your work and your dedication to this county. To Ron, Rachel, and Megan, we're especially proud of y'all, at least I am. I think I can speak fairly certain for the rest of the board, how important your work is to the county to correct our 90-10 residents to industry here in Union County. Y'all have been working very diligently, and we do appreciate all of your hard work. I'd like to encourage the citizens of Union County to reach out to your state representatives and ask them to support our legislation that we're in the excuse me, let me back that up. Ask the state to reverse this decision for the State Bill 382 in the municipalities to allow control of our local government. The citizens have spoken very clearly in the last couple of years that they want controlled growth here in Union County. This is a very important topic to our citizens, and they need to do what's in the best interest of this county and not the lobbyists in Raleigh. I'm also going to ask you to encourage them to pass single-item bills. One of them can be the HERO in North Carolina. Pass single-item bills so things like this don't get shoved in to relief for Western Union County. I was recently at a Republican event where we had 2 representatives there, and it got pretty heated with other representatives from municipalities, how frustrated they were that this passed. So please encourage one of them to be the hero. Let's start single item bills in North Carolina. And so things like this can't be snuck in. And do what's right for Union County. Do what's right for this county who you represent. Thank you.
Commissioner Balcom?
I'd like to echo what Commissioner Helms just said there. And also, I hope all you folks are able to stay warm over the next few days, and you have a good night.
Yep, drive home safe. I'll make a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Good night, everybody.